Boom! We are live. Welcome. This is Tokyo Tonight 2. The sound is turned on this week. All the switches are working. Had a few things setting up. Had to sort out the screen calibrations and whatnot, but pretty much in order. Just put the topics together. Hope you're all doing well. Good news is, I've got some topics other than just Olympics and coronavirus tonight. So hopefully we'll have some interesting things to do. PB, if you keep doing with the butter emojis there, I have to manually approve each one of them. People can see them anyway. It's okay. Good to see you all. Anyway, I hope you're all doing well. We should kind of be in the middle of rainy season in Tokyo. It's kind of started in Okinawa. In fact, it's finished in Okinawa. It started in Kyushu in West Japan, and we kind of had some rainy season stuff earlier this week, but we had a beautiful sunny day today. I went for a run. It was hot and sunny. It's going to be sunny tomorrow, so I guess we're not really in for rainy season until later in the week. That's all good. It's actually been super early this year, climate change and all that sort of thing, as people are saying. I don't hear people talking about El Nino so much anymore, but yes, hope it's good wherever you are in the world. It is, of course, 10:30 p.m. Japan Standard Time at the moment, Sunday night in Japan, as it is every week. So I know it's late if you're in New Zealand. It's pretty late if you're in Australia, and you're in the middle of the day in Europe and just waking up if you're in America. But good to have you there in the comments. Remember, as always, say hello. It's just nice to say hello. I like to start the video by saying hello to you all. It's just nice to see your virtual faces there and to say your names, even if you're shy, even if you just watch. Say hello. It's just nice. Also remember as well, if you want to get my attention or ask me a question or request a topic or do anything good like that, thank you, Dan H. It seems to work. Remember, as always, just say my name. You don't even have to @mark it anymore. You'll see on the thing. I give you the secret chat window. You can see what I see. It flashes orange. So hopefully I will notice that. And if you want to ask me something, just ask me and I'll talk about it. That is good. Otherwise, as always, there's plenty of stuff to talk about. I will have to go at a reasonable pace tonight. But and as usual, there is dramas and whatnot. But let's jump into it. Good to see Akasan. Man, yes, not worthy. It's I tell you, it's great to see. For some reason, I've been watching channels much bigger and better than mine lately, including I drop in on some of the I guess I don't catch you live very often, but I've seen a couple of your vids recently. But abroad in Japan I don't watch very often, but I watched his video in Hokkaido, which of course was just awesome. And he did a nice video the other day catching up on comments. Dorgin's videos, I think I've got one of them in here as well. I mean, he's just a genius. So yes, he's going to turn me into Lex Luthor, I think. Indeed it's going. Dan H, I'll spend it on fruit gums. Thank you. I actually found a way to buy fruit gums in Japan. If you're not from the UK or maybe Australia and New Zealand, they don't really sell them in New Zealand, Australia anymore. When I was a kid, they were like my favorite sweets. They're made by a company called Roundtrees, which is a UK company. And you can still get them in the UK, but you can't really get them anywhere else anymore. But I used to love these things. But the thing is, I eat sweets so infrequently now that I actually found a way to buy them. It cost 2,400 yen to buy like 4 packs that normally cost £1 each, so which is like about 600 yen. So this is like markup of 400%. For me, it's still worth it because I can't handle very many of them anymore. But I must admit, I had a couple the other day, and like 3 or 4, and I got like dry horrors and a headache after. I just can't handle the fake dyes and sugar and stuff anymore. Even though I love, I don't know if any of you know what fruit gums are, but those are my thing. So yes, when I see £2, I think in UK that would be 2 packs of fruit gums. So thank you very much, Dan H. So let's dive in, say hello to everybody, and then let's definitely get through the topics. Big shout out to Erin, as always. I see the moderator has arrived. She's just been pumping out the short edited videos. By the way, you all said to me, and I apologize, I can't see the ads on my videos because I pay for premium. So, which by the way, paying for premium and watching videos, apparently it helps with, it makes your videos, your views, like have extra monetization value or something. It's a good way. It means that you're supporting the channels that you're watching. But yeah, I didn't realize how annoying the ads actually were. I think I just flipped all the switches. So I turned most of the switches off. So hopefully the ads that you're seeing on my videos are a lot less annoying now, particularly hearing that some people were subjected to ads that were longer than the short videos and multiple ones. That was definitely not intentional. And by the way, it's kind of part of an experiment as well, just to see if I can up engagement on the channel. It's not really changing all that much, but I personally do appreciate, I think the videos look really great. I really appreciate that, Erin. You're being an enormous help. And like I said, we'll see how it goes. But Anyway, certainly I've turned down the monetization, so hopefully it's less annoying, and hopefully that helps with things. Let's say hello to people. Let's see who's in here. We got PB, hello world, did all the butter emoji testing. Oh, I see Aaron was very nice. I went and cleared the withheld ones. Yeah, I don't want to slow down for every single one, but yes, the butter emojis are still censored on this channel. I don't know, maybe we trained the algorithm for this. I wonder if this happened. I'm curious. Go do this on someone else, not right now, later. Go and do it on someone else's channel. I'm curious just if that happens. Dan H, good to see you indeed. Buttershot, boom, test buttershot, butter received. By the way, the butter situation is okay at the moment. I'm not sure exactly when the shortages actually occur, but there is a time every year. But yes, the commissary, are providing the appropriate supplies at the moment with no coal in them whatsoever, so that's good. So I think we said a lot of PB. Good Guys English World, evening, good to have you. Guys English World, English Learning Channel, Kiwi Sensei, good to see you in there. I don't know if you're into rugby, Guys English World, but yeah, I just watch the highlights. I can get, on YouTube, you can see like the 5-minute highlights of every game. Playing the New Zealand versus Australia series, 10-0. I don't want the Aussies to be that bad. I mean, it's fun beating them, but it gets like this. I start to feel sorry for them. So yeah, I don't know if you're following the rugby, but that is it's probably almost better not to. Frankly, whichever side you're supporting, you need the Aussies to be good for it to at least be interesting. But yes, New Zealand stuff. Quinn Ranker, good to see you. Odie Jr., butter boom. Indeed, like the way you say the butter boom. I still love your avatar. That's a good dog there. We got Nama Japan. Hey, Nama Japan. Hey, sup? Didn't know I do streams. I do stream. I've been doing streams since hell. It's actually getting to the point where it's not even an exaggeration to say possibly before you were born. It's kind of awkward. It's actually not a very cool comeback, is it, to say that? That just emphasizes the age thing. Good to see you, Nama Japan. Good to have you in here. Cheers from Shibuya, indeed. Yeah, just cross Tokyo. So good to see you. Barry Convex, hello. Good to see you. Still buffering, says Odie Jr. I have now completed the buffering. Shubas is on time. Our connection in Panama. Excellent to have you in the comments. And from the beginning, yeah, very good to say hello to you. Good to have you here early morning in Panama. I do appreciate you waking up on a Sunday morning and joining us. Comics Plus by Akasan, of course. Not worthy. Great to have you in the chat there. Thank you for joining. Lucy, hello friends, indeed. Hello Lucy, good to have you here. We've got, yes, Aaron recognizes as well. Papa Power, boom, indeed. Hope you are well. I'm definitely well. Looks like everyone, looks like they're in a good mood. Good that Dan H got that working, indeed. Yeah, I'll just respond to people saying my name, like Sergeant Bilko. Good to see you, Sergeant Bilko. I'll respond just to that. Oh, I jumped ahead there a moment, but of course, throwing money, you can do that as well. And thank you very much. And definitely, by the way, if I miss you, like doing that, sometimes it jumps like that scroll just did. Say it again. Say look up the thread, and I will do my best to stop and go back and catch those. We got who else we got in here? Make sure I'm not missing anybody. 270 AJ, good to have you. 270 AJ, good to have you in here. And last games of English Premier League 2021 season in an hour. Oh, they're all happening at once, are they? Okay. It's funny, the missus watches, so I guess that's what she's about to go watch. She's a big Liverpool fan. I don't know if you go. I'm dragged into it by default that way. Don't know who you lot are all supporting, but definitely enjoy that. Well, hopefully. It's an hour. It's perfect, isn't it? If I can actually be on time, you won't miss the games. Broadcast in our mornings. It's better for the audience, says Akasan. Certainly, Sunday morning is probably not. Thinking about the United States, and that's where the most people watch YouTube. Yeah, I could see how Sunday morning is probably not the most rocking time. I mean, people got either. Half the population waking up early and going to church, and the other half of the population sleeping and hungover, don't you? It's actually amazing that anyone watches this at all. I'm very glad that you're here, and again, this is partly why I so appreciate what Aaron's doing, helping me with the short videos. But you know what, Akash, that's why he's got the big channel, because he figured that out, and I've been doing this for 12 years, and that's the first time I actually made that connection. Well, there you go. I don't know, maybe stream it in church. That's probably not a good idea. We are light on profanity. I mean, there's no profanity. Yeah, I probably wouldn't make it into church, would it? Well, that is what that is. Tokyo 503, good to see you. I've got Sleepy 314, Santa Cruz checking in. Good to see you, Santa Cruz. Oh, subscriber. That was pretty good. That was exciting. I missed that. I want to see that again. It doesn't happen. Good to have new subscribers. Remember, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. It does help the channel. Also, remember, as Aaron will constantly remind you, if you like. I mean, again, it helps. I mean, I don't mind. Oh, there we go. It's Alan Touchberry. I can see the delayed streaming. Hey, welcome, Alan Touchberry. Thank you for subscribing. If you like, you can wait until the end and make a strict evaluation, whether you actually liked it or not, of course. Yeah, smash the like button, do all that good stuff. It does help. Erin, she's been working with the ads, so yeah, making them skippable. Thank you for doing that. I'm totally cool with you doing that as well. So thank you for. I definitely just want to make them watchable. It didn't load. Dan H saying that. Okay, if you're having buffering problems, donate money. Maybe it helps. I'm pretty sure that's unethical saying that. I'm sure it has nothing to do with it. But if it works, it works. Who knows what? Man, there's a lot of, actually great to see so many people saying hello, including some unfamiliar names. So I want to get all of these. Yeah. You're a bit behind, skipping a week for your birthday. Happy birthday, Aaron. And again, thank you for all the work that you do. We've got Milena and I'm gonna try to say the name, and it's probably gonna be wrong, and I apologize, but I want to say it. It's Perzibilik. Did I get that? I hope that's okay. Milena Perzibilik. Good to have you with us. First time watching live. Welcome. It's great to have you watching live. Good to have you in here, Milena. Actually, I'm curious. Hey, Milena, where in the world are you watching from? Very, very good to have you in here. Anyway. Brianna, good to have you, Brianna. Greetings indeed. Kareem Nishkor, good to have you back. Early afternoon in the UK. It's a civilized time of the day to watch, I suppose. Tawaiwai, kia ora, another Kiwi, good to have you back in the comments. Odie Jr., hey, you just work all the time, but pretty laid back job at the boss, so you can watch. Awesome. Hey, Milena's from Poland. So afternoon for you. Well, you're the first. I may have had people from Poland watching before, but you're the first person I've actually had say during the show that they're watching live from Poland. So I find that actually pretty exciting. Awesome to have you in the comments. And Alan Touchberry, you followed me on Twitter since the big earthquake 2011. I'm glad you enjoy the Twitter. This is basically like the audio profane uncensored version of my Twitter feed. I tried to take the things out of my Twitter feed and tell you what I was really thinking when I tweeted them. So yeah, it's awesome that you discovered it from the Twitter feed, and yeah, good to have you in here, Ellen, and following for a long time. So yeah, awesome, good to have you in the chat. Tim the Asian Ink, another person I love to follow on Twitter, and boom, indeed. Flynn, long time lurker. Hey, thank you for saying hello. This is great. Love it. Cheers from Vancouver, Canada. I went to Vancouver. I took the family there for a vacation. First time I've ever been to Canada. And yeah, like a year ago now, 2 years. Actually, no, it couldn't have been a year ago because we were all locked in our homes. It was 2 years ago. But Vancouver is awesome. I really loved Vancouver. So yeah, great to have you from Vancouver. Early in the morning too. So yes, somehow I get this weird leftover, not hungover and not going to church demographic. I very much appreciate it. Sainted Sir, good to see you, and close to the actual pronunciation. That's very generous. Yeah. Well, anyway, great to have you, Milena, and everybody. Thanks everyone who said hello. And yeah, it's already 15 minutes in, and I always get to the top of the hour, and I've got like 20 topics to cover, and I only have 2 covered at the top of the hour, which is 15 minutes from now. Well, that's because I put the most interesting topics first. That's another thing. I did arrange the topics. So, and me talking about the topics is increasing the delay. So let's see, let's just jump in. I'm going to go through these one by one. I'm going to leave gaps to make them easier to edit. Tell me if you've got questions while I'm doing it, and I will come to them at the end of talking about each topic. First topic. The immigration law, which was basically aimed at clarifying Japan's immigration law. Part of the reason that Japan was condemned by the United Nations for having indefinite detention of people, if you come to Japan and you overstay your tourist visa or your work visa, or you violate the terms of it, and they take you into immigration detention, which I have heard described accurately by lawyers who support people in immigration detention. It's the outer circle of hell. It's Japanese prison is bad enough because, you know, you basically have no human rights in that. But and this is probably true actually in any country, in prisons, you're still a citizen. You still have a certain degree of civil rights in the prison system. In the immigration system, you're basically like a non-person. You know, the immigration laws, which only really became a thing in the 20th century, have created a concept of a person being an illegal person, which didn't exist before, which I just despise the concept of someone being by their immigration permit status an illegal person. But it means that when you go into these immigration detention things, they don't even use the same standards or the same sort of protections that you would have in prisons. And this highlights that case. There are so many cases of mysterious deaths and so on that happen in Japanese immigration detention centers. And because Japan had this weird thing that it didn't have powers or doesn't have powers to force deportation of people. If people do not cooperate with deportation, you basically just stay in limbo in immigration detention indefinitely. And when you consider that Japan only approves out of 20,000 applicants something like 50 to 60 refugees every year, even if the vast majority of refugees are fake and there's no proof of, you know, that per se, but they clearly reject a lot of people that are genuinely afraid to go back to their home countries, and so they end up just sitting perpetually in immigration detention. And if you get into trouble in that immigration detention, like medical problems or abuse by guards and security workers and so on, you know, the prison doctor, the medical systems and so on, all the backups they have in prisons don't exist in these immigration detention centers. And Amnesty's made a comment about this, that yeah, people die in these centers all the time. And when you're in, so the thing about, at least when you're in a jail or a prison, you know when you are going to get out. But when you're in immigration detention in Japan, it is, you know, it's a gulag. It's been described like that. And this is something which has been highlighted, that, you know, it can actually it can be especially stressful to be in the situation and not knowing how you're going to get it resolved. And remember, this can happen not just from overstaying your visa. It can happen from weed. It can happen from what you might think is a petty sort of a crime. When they talk about, for example, when you're traveling into Japan, and they make you sign up that you will stay at your home and you will respect the voluntary quarantine, and you might think, screw that, I'm going to roppongi and go drinking, as 30% of Japanese people in voluntary quarantine do. It's been proven that they don't abide by the terms of it. But Japanese are not subject to penalties for violating voluntary quarantine, but foreigners are subject to deportation, which means they'll drop you into a detention center. And what happened in a recent case, right, as they were proposing to amend the immigration law in a way that would actually allow Japanese government to forcibly deport people, which most countries can do, but Japan didn't give itself those powers, which was part of the reason for the perpetual detention. So the immigration law, in response to the United Nations saying that Japan was abusing the human rights of immigration detainees, rather than try to improve the human rights of the detainees, it simply tried to make it easier to just boot them out and kick them out of the country. And there was a case where, I've talked about it before, there was a Sri Lankan woman who was in Japan on I believe a student visa, but she was married to another foreigner who was working in Japan. She sought help for domestic abuse, domestic violence from the police, and when she went to the police and the police discovered that her visa had expired, they arrested her and sent her to immigration detention, where she was apparently had been for a year. At a time that she had some sort of an aneurysm. She had a sort of apparently an internal sort of brain hemorrhage. She was bleeding from her nose. She was asking the guards for help. The guards ignored her request for medical attention, and she died of medical attention. Her family, understandably in Sri Lanka, were outraged. They're actually in Japan right now. They're demanding that the immigration justice, who is also the justice minister, immigration comes under the justice ministry in Japan. They're demanding that the government have a full inquiry into finding out how she was able to die while in the custody of the Ministry of Justice, and put in proper measures to make sure it doesn't happen again, including, as part of the clarification of how she died, to disclose the security camera footage from within the detention centers to show what happened to her. The Minister of Justice, whose name escapes me right now, but met with the family the other day, apparently wept with them, said that she has a son the same age as the daughter who died. It said that she sympathized with them and would cooperate with them, but at the same time, in committees with the family present, she absolutely said that the government would never share the video of the incident, and they have to be allowed to handle this their own way, i.e. basically although the family is in Japan and they've extended their stay in Japan to try to get justice, at least to find out what happened and to make sure this doesn't happen again to anyone else. Credit to the family actually being very brave doing that. The justice minister, even to their faces, even crying and hugging them, then completely treats them like crap, basically. And in light of that and the controversy around this and the treatment of detainees and the fact that the proposed immigration amendment law didn't address that, the opposition said this is not an acceptable situation to amend the immigration law right now with all of this going on. The government agreed it didn't need the drama, it had other bills, so they decided to toss out the amendment to the law as this continues, which I suppose is kind of a win, but at the same time, the fact that the Justice Minister is not actually proposing to do anything about this in terms of a real investigation, as the family's quite reasonably asking for. On top of that, the Prime Minister, the Prime Minister made a comment, which I had all queued up, and it's not in the right place. Is it not there? I'm going to find it. It must have moved around. But he basically said, he didn't think that the immigration is really a politically sensitive issue anyway. So he thought that, it was better to deal with the immigration amendment. It wasn't as urgent as things like the budget and so on. So we'll come back to that later. And that comment itself was really, really interesting. On the one hand, of course, I actually appreciate that in most countries, immigration is just one of those things that it's a very easy card to throw out when you're a nationalist and you're appealing to people who are afraid for their jobs or afraid about the economy or hate foreigners or whatever. It's a very easy thing to say, hey, we need to control immigration more. And even in New Zealand, this is a thing. New Zealand First, literally a party called New Zealand First, is like the third or fourth biggest political party in New Zealand. They had the balance of power for a time. And they're literally anti-immigration. That's how that is. Basically, old people who don't want Asians in New Zealand literally held up the party that held the balance of power in New Zealand for a long time. The Australian, I would say even worse equivalent, One Nation Party is the same. You think about how in every country, how immigration is such a sort of an easy topic for people to sort of abuse for political gain. In Japan, it hasn't been used that way. It's never been politicized. It's one of the few good things about having the LDP stably in power, and they are a right-wing government, so they don't need to appeal to be more right-wing than themselves already. And what's happened is, in the time that I've been in Japan, of course, immigration has radically increased. There was like 300,000 or 400,000 foreigners when I got here in the late 1990s, and now there's like nearly 3 million. The number of foreigners and the ease of the length of visas that are available have all radically increased. And this has been done by the bureaucracy. It hasn't been debated in Parliament, and I think that's actually a good thing. However, the fact that the Prime Minister thinks that immigration is not really an important issue and that they can push it back to left, that's literally what he said. Again, when you think about the demographic issue is one of the most important things facing Japan at the moment. And again, the general attitude of the government here of just not understanding or caring or doing the right thing, and this underscoring particularly the situation with this death in custody, just highlights what in a way, even when they're doing the right thing, they still find a way to do it wrong, the Japanese government. It's a terrible mess. I really hope for the family that they do. You know what? This has come up in so many cases. There are so many cases of mysterious deaths happening in immigration detention, and it's literally people being killed by the Justice Ministry. So I really hope that this one gets clarified and that it does result in. I mean, it's bad enough. You think about it. The thing about getting deported, it's worse than jail in some ways. I mean, if you've got if you've got roots, if you've got a job, if you've got family or whatever, you can be cut off from all of that. It's like losing your entire life in a place. So often when you think about small crimes, and this is the risk that you have as a foreigner on a visa in Japan, that it's not just a permit violation or whatever, even small things that can lead to that. It's such a big risk. And to think on top of that, on top of basically losing your whole life in Japan, that you can actually have physical danger and the stress of not knowing how long you're going to be in detention. Japan struggles with this, and it needs to improve. So it's good that attention is being drawn to it. That's the first topic. I talked for 10 minutes, and I'm definitely only going to get through 2 topics before the top of the hour. But that's how it goes. Let's jump into the comments. Let's boom, 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 boom. A few people having comments there. I see. Okay, caught up here. Believe in yourself. Good to see you. Sadiq Hakan Gurus. Good to see you. By the way, I saw on your Facebook the other day, a while ago now, but congrats on getting American citizenship. That's awesome. Tawaiwai, that could indeed be it. No viewer left behind. Yes, I like that. You can hashtag that. Bye, McNeil. Good to see you, Bye. Good to have you here in the chat. We've got Queen Danny Targaryen. Good to have you. I'm sorry if I butchered the names, but I am trying. Good to have. It's good to see you there in the chat. Got not that much, Jess. Good to see you. And Dan H. Denmark and Rwanda have signed a deal to transfer asylum seekers from Denmark to Rwanda. Also, Denmark is trying to transfer Syrian refugees back to Syria due to them claiming it's safe now. Yeah, that's... is it safe? I mean, Rwanda, well, I suppose if you were an escaped genocide, war criminal, that I could understand perhaps. Rwanda actually has a wonderful reputation right now in terms of the economy, although the politically it still is a little bit tough. But Syria, isn't that a little bit soon? I mean, I know that it's controversial there. That's remarkable. Well, Japan's policy is simply to reject everybody. I think of like the 20 that they accepted. A couple were Syrian, like from when the war was happening, but there's so many people that don't. So yeah, obviously, not many countries can be said to be showing a good example on refugees. I mean, Australia is one of the craziest, of course. They not only put them in these horrible sort of effectively concentration camps, but they actually move them to Nauru, a tropical, Pacific island away from Australia for it. And all sorts of problems there. So, probably no point comparing, but certainly, Japan can do better at what it does. To Waiwai, nice to see me wearing Panasonic blue in honor of the former All Blacks player, coach Japanese rugby champions, indeed. Although Bowden was, there were Kiwis all over the place, of course, in the rugby final today. But good win for Panasonic as well. Also, I will try to come back and remember to subscribe to the Thomas Ash. That rings a bell. He's the director of the film Ushku. Okay, I'll check that out. Thank you. Quint Rankin, does Japan have a guarantee of due process? It does, but in most countries, the guarantee of due process doesn't apply to immigration detainees because, technically they're treated as if they're not supposed to exist in the country in the first place. It's often an exception. Steve from Berkeley, better late than never indeed. Good to have you in here. Second topic, 2 minutes before the top of the hour. I'm only going to make it through I kind of jumped ahead and got the other one in there as well. Okay, this is a doozy. Let's talk about this. What town was this actually? Ibaraki, the Kitakyushu of Honshu. That doesn't really probably makes sense if you know what Kitakyushu is like. It's a bit of a, Tochigi and Ibaraki. They're in the northern Kanto plains. They're kind of famous for having a bit of a funny accent, and they have sort of a Yankee, the Bolsuzoki, the guys with the big hair and the sort of motorcycle, the gangs and whatnot up there. Although that said, lovely place. My favorite place to surf, Kashima Beach. They've got great surfing along the Owarai. If you love natto. Which you probably don't, but if you do, it's a great place to go to. But yes, Ibaraki, this is from the Prefectural Health Division. So, the Itako Health Center, apparently they distributed a notice to agricultural cooperatives within its jurisdiction saying, there are many coronavirus patients likely infected by foreigners. If you talk with a foreigner, wear a mask. As well, please do not eat with them. Why would they do that? Well, other than just being racist, which they obviously that's an unacceptable statement. Where does it come from? The background to the unacceptable racist statement from Ibaraki. I mean, thank you for becoming immediately the drunk racist uncle of Japanese local governments. What's happening behind this is, of course, there are, under the apprenticeship visa scheme that I've talked about a lot on this channel, there are a lot of dormitories and so on with many Vietnamese and people from other Asian countries in particular living in close quarters in these dormitories that work on these farms in Ibaraki, in these rural areas. And apparently, for whatever reason, these dormitories have people living in close quarters with one another, and apparently the health bureaus in Ibaraki have found some clusters that have taken place in these dorms. So that apparently is the backstory to this. But the conclusion that they drew from that was telling everybody not to associate with the foreigners anymore. Yeah, which really, if someone looks like a foreigner, don't talk with them and don't eat with them. They retracted the advice promptly when someone pointed out to them that looked a little bit too nasty. That didn't look appropriate, and they did that. Of course, it made, again, the good news is that it got like coverage all over the things, including on NHK and mainstream national news, as being completely unfathomable and unacceptable. So the good news is that everybody was appropriately upset, as they should be. And whatever the justification, of course, the outcome is that, effectively the advice is to avoid people who look foreign. And, it's as if we have enough problems right now. I'd also worry myself that just the advice on its own could also reinforce the idea that maybe foreigners are traveling back and forth right now, which we definitely are not. Japanese are allowed to do that. Japanese can leave the country and come back, but foreigners are not allowed to come back into the country if we leave. So, we're like the ones who are least likely to be bringing it in right now. The UK variant, which is currently the 77% of cases in Tokyo, was brought in by a Japanese employee of Reuters, or I think this is one of the stories that's going around for that. And almost certainly the Indian variants that are now raging in Osaka, causing much higher infection rates and severity of cases, even though the overall rates are coming down right now, affecting people a lot worse down there. These are almost entirely by Japanese people coming back. But the old knee-jerk thing certainly was there in the beginning, that this is something that foreigners must be bringing in. I mean, remember, we're the ones who can get deported if we violate the voluntary quarantine rules. There's no enforcement on Japanese people for this. But yeah, not helpful, Ibaraki. But yes, so that is the thing that happened. That is disappointing. The fact it made the national news shows that it's not common. And it was rightly condemned and called out, but still, that's a thing that happened that shouldn't have. So there you go. Back into the comments. Here we go. If I try to trace the comments that don't flag me, I will miss it. Thomas Ash is a filmmaker who was recently on the FCCJ talking about Japan's asylum detention centers. Ushku is what his film's coming. Oh, Ushku's the Ibaraki detention center, right? I've heard about that place. And that is bad. So, okay. Oh, that is fascinating. Thank you for the tip there, Dan H. I will need to look that up. And everybody, I'm going to jump into the next topic. Boom. The Japanese government faces a crisis as there are increasing stories, sometimes even from, ironically, the Labor Standards Bureau, which is the department of government which polices, which audits companies to make sure that they're not working their employees above the 80 hours overtime or more working to death standard. And yet, that very department of the government itself had employees that were working like 200 hours overtime and working to death. And with all the number of stories relating to overwork and people dying overworking within the Japanese bureaucracy, as well as, frankly, the lack of pay, it was always very prestigious in the past. The fact that Japanese bureaucrats, one in Japan, as I've talked about, the whole immigration law thing in Japan was basically just on autopilot, being left to the bureaucrats to make the right decisions. And this is how most of how the Japanese government runs. The democracy, the involvement of the legislature and the parliament in the actual rulemaking, most Japanese laws, if you read Japanese laws, are super thin. They just have chapter 1, the rules, chapter 2, the details, and all the stuff that gets filled in below it gets signed off. It gets rubber stamped by a minister, but basically, the legislature here is very, very superficial. Most of the actual laws, if you're actually interested, and if you're passionate about environmental regulation, there's no point running for parliament in Japan. I mean, there's if you really want to do something, there's two paths that you go. You become a local politician, where they actually have enforcement powers. You can see with things like the vaccinations, or you become a bureaucrat, because the bureaucrats actually are the ones that do most of the things. And it's always been traditional in Japan that, whatever job that you got, be it in a famous bank or Toyota or some famous company or in the government, you are going to get fixed crappy pay for life. But it was a trade-off. The pay wasn't great, but you would get the prestige and you would get the security. And no job was more secure than a government job in government, plus the benefits in terms of vacations and insurance and stuff like that in government was also great. Plus the fact that you actually got the ability to move the needle. I mean, back in the day, the Ministry of MITI, now METI, Economy, Trade and Industry. I think it was Industry, Trade and Industry. What was the other one? Well, I forget what MITI used to stand for, but METI is what it is now. But if you worked for that, you literally would design the cars. You would tell the car companies what kind of cars they had to make. So they were very influential and attractive sort of jobs for people. Nowadays, of course, if you're smart, you've got the right skills, you want to go work in an IT company. If you're an AI engineer, you can get like 6 figures. You can get more than a Toyota exec can get nowadays in your first year out of college. Plus, with the increasing distrust of government and the fact that work conditions, I suppose you add in the other factors, like, for example, of course, people say that, millennials don't like to work, long hours anymore. I don't know that any generation, hey, I'm from Gen X, we were skateboarding and drinking Mountain Dew, and I'm pretty sure we didn't like working long hours either, but, now I'm getting to the age where I talk about, but we were forced to do it and we did it anyway. But I think what's happened is not so much that the people, I don't think that 23-year-olds, want to work any more or less than they wanted to work 20 years ago. The difference is that it's definitely a buyer's market right now. If you're looking for a job, there is a demographic job shortage, because that fella doesn't understand that immigration is necessary to increase the pool of young people in Japan, and they can choose jobs based on what they want to do, and they can be picky, and they can choose jobs that are not going to work them to death and that will pay better. And the government can't really match private sector salaries or working conditions. And when you have that outside of Dentsu and some of these old big famous companies that are working people to death, when most of the working to death stories are happening in the government, of course they don't want to work in the government. And if you want to change the world, hell, start a YouTube channel. Some people seem to think, make TikTok videos, who knows? But again, the attraction of being an immigration policy expert is not as much as it used to be, and it's not as prestigious as it used to be. So the government has this problem. How do they attract people? And they're just about to start this digital agency where I think they're looking to hire something like 20,000 people, and they need people who are going to be experts in digital economy, yet they have to work for a government agency where, of course, the actual digital companies, you can actually do much more interesting work. So it's challenging, and it's a good thing. It's a good thing that the bureaucracy doesn't, and also the fact that if you're going into a job in the bureaucracy, yes, you probably still do have something like lifetime employment, but you've got 10 years of hazing and then another 30 years before you get any sort of chance of advancement, no matter how good or bad you are, right? The seniority, the fact it's dominated by old people, it represents everything that, again, the economy is trying to change right now. So it's kind of funny. This used to be like the job, the prestigious sort of job to get, and it's hard to attract anymore. The dormitory, by the way, that bureaucrats live in, right beside Kudanshita, is like it's really nice, and it's in a fantastic location. But the Torlai grads, they're not looking for these sort of jobs anymore, and good on them. They're looking for jobs in tech companies and startups and so on, where they're actually doing real stuff. And to me, that's really, really cool. But it reflects the times. Back into the comments. Not a lot of extra. You could deport them to the Shinkaku. I think you mean the Senkaku Islands, and that would work out really well. I'm sure that it would. Next story. Okay, these are not as organized as I meant them to be, but are we already getting into the coronavirus stories? Okay, well, let's do that. So these will be, I'll just bunch all of these together. Okay, I thought I organized the order of these. You know what? There was a story that I'm going to come back to the coronavirus stories last. I want to talk about the other things first, just to have something else to talk about. I mean, of course, there's always stuff with the Olympics, and there's always stuff with the coronavirus, but I can squish that up. So let's talk about this. The Ministry of Defense. By the way, that guy although he's got a different name, and I forget. I've read it a couple of times, and every time I've read it, I've been like, oh, and then I've kind of like forgotten again. But he's the brother of Shinzo Abe, apparently, Kishi, and Abe's father was called Kishi and was actually prime minister post-war, and his brother has his father's name, but Abe doesn't have his father's name, and I forget how that works. But anyway, he's the Minister of Defense. And he is talking about, for the first time since 1953, since Japan regained independence after the occupation, about removing the 1% cap. It's not actually legislated, I don't think. It's just like a voluntary self-imposed limit that they will not spend more than 1% of the GDP on the defense forces. Now remember, Japan's got the third biggest economy, so 1% of GDP is still like a hell of a lot. They're like, I can't remember what the number actually is, but it's like they've got the sixth highest military spend in the world, although you're not allowed to call it the military. It is actually silly. They buy F-35s and then they like ask them to, lop off the fuel tanks so that they don't look like they can fly as far or be used defensively. They're trying to make everything look like it can only be used for defense. But of course, the whole nature of military is logistics. The whole idea is that, yes, of course, you can just strap on extra fuel tanks and do whatnot to whatever back, but they spend extra money disabling all the equipment that they buy. Of course, with China now spending a lot, and like with areas, flashpoints like the Senkaku Islands that were just mentioned, the fact that they, first China sent the Coast Guard every now and again, then they sent the Coast Guard like every day, then they sent multiple ships every day, then they built enormous ships, much bigger than the Japanese ships. Then they passed a law making the Coast Guard part of the Chinese military. Then they put large guns on top of the Coast Guard. I mean, they're basically anything. They're all but warships that the Chinese ships are now sending in force around the Senkaku Islands every day. And I think it's becoming increasingly clear that the China's incrementally moving towards basically just taking these by, through gradual steps. And it's pretty clear for Japan. I think the 1% increase in the increase in spending that Japan wants to make partly is to match China, but also it wouldn't be, again, you can't increase the number of people in the self-defense forces in Japan. It would be based on buying probably drones and satellite equipment and so on to be able to automate the defense of Japan, and probably starting with that particular area. Getting more high-tech stuff. Of course, the new airplanes and everything are more expensive. Japan's bought a whole bunch of the F-35s and whatnot. It is significant. On the one hand, of course, Japan, a lot of people think that, and of course you have the other subtext to this of Kishi's brother wanting to amend the constitution. And while, I'm actually open to the idea constitutions should be living documents and you should be able to amend it. And Japan's constitution is very, very hard to amend. You actually have to have a two-thirds majority in both houses of parliament, as well as a national referendum with 50% plus approval for any amendment of the referendum. I looked this up on Twitter, actually. There's a Wikipedia page of how hard it is to amend constitutions in most countries. And yeah, Japan, most have similar criteria to that. Some countries require referendums as well as parliamentary majorities, but having double house supermajorities plus referendum is one of the highest standards. It's very hard to amend. And while the LDP really wants to amend Article 9, allowing basically that says that Japan can't have military forces, which it clearly does, it wants to legalize the self-defense forces. To me, you should be able to amend the constitution for other things, for things like marriage rights, things like, the fact that back in 1953 there were no foreigners in Japan other than, occupying military. There's all sorts of circumstances that change that the constitution should be changed for. I think it's a good thing if you get that level of buy-in, including militarizing the country. I think Japan's entitled to do that. Not many countries in the world have a ban. The idea that if you wage a war of aggression, that you should be constitutionally banned by another country from having a military anymore. By that standard, Japan is the only country that accepts that standard. The US wouldn't be allowed to have a military. Could you imagine? By that standard. So, personally, I think Japan is better for having had the cap on spending, and it's better for having all these restrictions on its military and not getting into all of these wars. Think about it. Japan could have been in the Korean War. America wanted Japan to be involved in the Korean and the Vietnam Wars. Japan did well economically off those wars, by the way, for war production, but you think about the number of lives that it saved. Japan's done pretty well off of this, and I don't know why these people want to go back to war. But if the whole country, if that amount of people want to do that, I think they're entitled to do that. And no question, what's changed in terms of the status quo is the Chinese escalation in spending and so on in the region, and specifically aimed at territory controlled by Japan. So it's fair enough to me that they would want to increase the spending. That said, conscription I still think is unthinkable in this country. I can't think that the country would ever accept it. But, I've got a son who's a Japanese citizen. So if that sort of thing ever happened, I think we'd pull the New Zealand passport and up and out in that situation. I can't see that happening, by the way, which is why I'm quite happy living here. And I do think it is reasonable that Japan is being forced to kind of match, in order to make sure it can still defend itself. So that's a shame that it has to do that. But yeah, that's a thing that's happening. It's interesting. I'm curious what people think if Japan should continue to be prohibited from having a normal military. But like I said, I think it's a great thing that it did. But at the same time, let's face it, it was imposed on Japan. It wasn't actually Japan's real choice. And while a lot of Japanese people passionately agree with Article 9, and it's going to be very hard to change, at the same time, if they want to change, let them. And certainly spending in the meantime. Just quickly checking. Gig economy is here to say. No other comments directed at me. I'm going to keep diving through the topics. The Maglev project, the escape from Japan's Cleveland project, the escape from Nagoya project, is still stalled because if you look at a map between Tokyo and Nagoya, if you draw a straight line, it has to go through Shizuoka Prefecture, the prefecture of Mount Fuji, among other things. And the construction companies just assumed that they could totally drill through a large water source that actually supports most of the tea growing of Shizuoka Prefecture. It's Shizuoka's most famous agricultural product is green tea. And they've just blocked it. They've said, no, homie, don't play that. And homie has stopped the Maglev, and it's missing all of its construction goals, and the project's basically frozen. And as much as it'd be cool to ride on this, you could get from Shinagawa to Nagoya 45 minutes. I think it'd be on this. Right now, it's about an hour and a half on the 300 kilometer hour bullet train. It would be 600 kilometers per hour on this with 45 minutes. That's probably less, I think, than it takes to get from Shinjuku to Hachioji on the main central line in Tokyo. Certainly from Tokyo Station. So it's kind of funny. You can get to Nagoya faster than you could get to the western suburbs of Tokyo. But of course it has to go through Shizuoka, and Shizuoka is just not having it. So domestic politics is still sort of messing that up. Plus, of course, there were the bid rigging scandals that you always get with large construction public works projects like this, and people going to jail for that. So that's a thing that's happening. Quint Rankit, isn't this an opportunity for Japan to make better friends with other nations that feel threatened by China? It is, and Japan is obviously doing that, and it does that in soft ways. The fact it's having military exercises in the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean with the Indian military and the British military. I think Britain's sending an aircraft carrier to the Indian Ocean to have exercises in a few weeks. And with Australia and whatnot, the fact that Australia bought submarines from Japan because Japan uses submarines that are interoperable with US systems. There's already a lot of that going on anyway, but certainly, no question, those things are all there. Lysander 45, a flock of geese. You haven't missed much. Don't worry about it. But good to have you here in the chat. Certainly Japan's entitled to have a more normal military if it wants one. And if it doesn't want one, it's okay not to have one. It's in a unique situation, but it'll be interesting to see what happens. Does Japan still have telegrams? Asked Quint Rankid. I don't know. You know what? The thing about sending a telegram at a wedding and stuff like that you still do in New Zealand, I think it's the only time that you send telegrams. I haven't noticed that happening at Japanese weddings. I'm not sure. I guess not. It had Pokebell. It had pages until a couple of years ago. I guess you fax something. I don't know. Who knows? I talked about the immigration bill. That is Olympic stuff. There was a couple of other things here. This is The Onion, although this was too good. I'm not an expert on American baseball, but Shohei Ohtani, who's on the news every day, every time he hits a home run right now, he's getting a lot of attention in Japan. Apparently he's getting attention in America, and that's great. He was the first pick out of college in Japan. I don't know anything about even Japanese baseball, but I know about this guy, and so and it's great that he's doing well over in America. And Japanese love to do news coverage of Japanese doing well in America. Shohei Ohtani regrets not researching which teams were good before signing with the Angels. Just reading this and the Twitter reactions to it and so on, apparently it rings true. Biggest disappointment was discovering that they were actually going to play in some shitty town called Anaheim instead of Los Angeles. I had to look that one up. I looked at a map and I was, oh, it's in Los Angeles, but okay, that's probably a clever joke. So anyway, I thought that was kind of funny. This is also funny I was going to say also funny crime news, but that wasn't a crime. I think I mentioned this before, but this is kind of crazy. Oh God, there's 10 minutes left. Okay, gather around, kids. I've got a story for you. 2 years ago, about 2 years ago, I think, there was like there's an art exhibition being held in a public art gallery in Nagoya on the theme of freedom of speech in Japan. And apparently, as part of this exhibition, there were deliberately provocative works of art which were intended to sort of demonstrate Japan's unique protected legal freedom of speech. The fact that in Japan, unlike many countries, there isn't actually that much censorship, or I suppose Japan does have obscenity laws. You've all seen the mosaics and so on. But generally speaking, in terms of what you can say and do, of course, there are people with very strong opinions. There are people who think you shouldn't be able to say whatever you like. There are people who react very adversely to it, but legally speaking, you can do this. And so this art exhibition that was themed on freedom of speech apparently included, among other things, a video of someone tearing up a photo of the emperor and setting it on fire and stamping on it. Another exhibit, by the way, this looked like from every day outside of the Japanese embassy in Korea. It looked like they did this as an art exhibition, and to add to that theme, there was another artwork of basically another statue, a comfort woman statue. You know what they look like, basically, the young girl sitting down on a chair. They had that as an exhibit. As well, and as intended, these were provocative artworks, deliberately provocative artworks, and they triggered an extreme reaction. In fact, some ultra right-wing groups actually threatened to bomb the the art center for having these, and in the end, I think they removed the exhibit. It was shown for a while. But what particularly wound people up was that this was, or at least the people who were most outraged by this, and it was designed to outrage people. But what most outraged the outraged people was the fact that this was being done in a public art gallery, tax-funded art gallery, and the committee and board of this art gallery. Pardon me, the tip of my nose is just itchy. Among the people on the board, the governor of Aichi Prefecture, where Nagoya is, was on the board of this art gallery, which approved the exhibition and the works in it, including these works that were particularly offensive to far-right wingers. So basically, from the rage, the bomb threats and the rage that led to this all being shut down, and actually the governor apologizing in the end under pressure for allowing these exhibits to be shown in a freedom of speech exhibition. And it's kind of the idea, but he apologized for it. However, the Japan sort of political far right swung into action that they were going to get rid of this guy, that they were going to get retaliation, particularly led by people from the Osaka First Party, I think is the best way to describe it. Ishinokai, he's actually not in that anymore, but there's like some big political guy there, some other prominent right-wingers, and Japan's most famous cosmetic surgeon, that guy from Takasu Clinic, who's written a bunch of books that basically are sort of revisionist and saying that Japan didn't do anything wrong during the war, and the Chinese had it coming and all sorts of crazy stuff. And they all got together and said, let's get a petition to recall the governor of Aichi for endorsing this, this extremely offensive art exhibit. So they went crazy with that, and they're allowed to do that. I mean, great, go get a petition. But of course, simply doing a petition isn't really exciting enough. So they decided to get family members and friends and hire people, and they got those people to collect a certain amount of signatures. It sounds like they got about 150,000 signatures. However, they also got 850,000 signatures by purchasing illegal personal information registers and having staff just day in, day out falsely enter based on the personal information that they found on these illegal personal information registers that they had. And this money was paid the people, and as soon as it came out that basically this petition of 1 million signatures to recall the governor of Aichi Prefecture was 85% sent 850,000 faked signatures, and it was done at the direction of all these very, very angry right-wingers that wanted to get back at the governor. When this became known, it became a criminal case, and as people were arrested one by one, basically all the people involved in the petition started throwing each other under the bus, saying, oh, it was all that guy, he didn't tell me anything about it. But then people who were doing it would say, oh, no, they totally told me to do it. So they basically kept getting arrested one by one. They're now facing prison time. They've been arrested, they are facing trial, and the more that they're turning them in, the more they're turning on each other and blaming each other, and they're all ending up in jail for this. So basically, I mean, sure, there's a debate as to whether, this was really a good use of tax funds in the first place. I would say that it is. I mean, I think it's what distinguishes Japan, even from other democracies in East Asia, that Japan is particular. Yes, you have crazy right-wingers and so on, but the fact is, there is almost no political censorship in Japan. I mean, there's a lot of talk about the textbooks and how that works and so on, but essentially you can publish a book or express an opinion from full extremes: anti-emperor, anti-right-wing, full, we were all war criminals, and you have all of that. You have an active communist party that gets lots of votes, very, very left-wing pro-communist sort of teachers' unions and everything. Far more, in many ways, the spectrum is more broad and lively here in Japan than it is in many democracies. But of course you have these fringe people who, it's ironic, in their hatred of China, believe that Japan should do what China does and suppress all speech that they disagree with. And the fact that these people's brains exploded to the point that they were actually, they went out and faked 850,000 signatures, and they're going to jail for it, basically as a result of their outrage at these art exhibitions, which were designed to challenge people and to demonstrate the freedom of speech that they have, and admittedly for the fact it was in a public art gallery. Yes, I mean, for me, I'm just eating popcorn and watching this all day. It's, I said it's a fun criminal case, but yeah, this is exactly the point, right? So anyway, that was kind of fun. Yeah, apparently there is this Italian person, very nice looking chap, an Italian person. There's this thing that happens in a lot of places, my friend who's Italian went to Saizeriya and said that Saizeriya is exactly like Italy. And you know what? Saizeriya is pretty good. I agree with this person to the extent that Saizeriya is awesome. You know what Saizeriya is? I mean, so there's a few of these sort of cheap, affordable family restaurants in Japan. Saizeriya is among the cheap and friendly. There's the Jonathan's, and there's Gusto, and there's a few of these very affordable. Basically, even high school students could affordably go in there and have you can get good food for like less than $5. You can get like a proper meal, like with bread and salad and steak and a drink, and it's like $5, and you say, how can this be? And some of the places, like honestly for me, Jonathan's, it tastes like $5, but Saizeriya, it tastes good. It does taste good. And the miracle of how they do it is it's all TV dinners. It's all frozen. It's all pre-prepared in a factory, and it's frozen, but they've just used super high tech for this. All the food in Saizeriya is microwaved, but yet the pizza is crispy and delicious. The pizzas are excellent. All the food there, the pasta, the salads. I used to love the hot grilled beef salads, and they come out fresh. They taste like they've been cooked in an oven. They come out super fast, and you eat until you're full, and the bill is less than $10. I mean, and you'll be full and drunk. I mean, I used to have get-togethers for drinks, sometimes at Saizeriya with friends. And you get like you have a choice of wines as red or white, and they're like a liter, and it's all excellent food. And the fact that it is affordable and friendly and volume, and it tastes great. Yeah. I mean, but this thing about I don't know that one Italian person endorsing it means that it necessarily constitutes a trip to Italy. But for what it is very, very good. If you're in Japan on a budget, and you just want to have some really, really good food that's really affordable, Saizeriya is the best. It is the best. If you want to go a bit classier, family restaurant, Royal Host, that's my favorite. You maybe pay about $12 for that, and you'll actually have excellent food. But man, I lived in places where Saizeriya was like the only place other than the convenience store, like when I had my first job in Japan, and that was awesome. I still love it. My son loves it. So yeah, I'm not sure it actually constitutes Italy. And there is this thing which you experience, particularly in small towns. When I went on my first trip to Japan, on the school trip, they got all the students. They said, now remember, when you go overseas, you're an ambassador for your country. Everybody's going to judge New Zealand by you, so don't be a dick. It's like what they told us, all those 15-year-olds. I mean, which is just like an impossible promise to keep. But we all went over there, and I always had that. You always have that sense that you're representing. But in Japan, it's really true. If you were like, if I'm like in New Zealand and I were to say that Japan has the best looking sheep outside of, New Zealand, that'd be credible. That'd be expert advice for Japan. I'd probably get in the newspaper. Maybe I should do that. Japan has some pretty good looking sheep. It does. I mean, I've actually been to Maza Bokujo in Chiba, and they actually had a New Zealand-style dog show there, and yeah, the sheep were pretty good. I was surprised. They were good quality stock there. So who knows? Maybe I can get in there as well. But it's only an Italian endorsing Saizeriya becomes a bit of a celebrity for it. I don't know if that's a crime in Italy, but it is very good. And this is kind of what I shared this on Twitter. I saw other people say the same thing. Like, yeah, I wouldn't say it's a trip to Italy, but yeah. Italian friends and friends who know Italian say that, oh yeah, they go to Saizeriya all the time. Everybody loves it. It's good food, and it's kind of Italian. So yes. Sumo. Oh man, I am over time, but I'm gonna rapid fire this. Asanoyama, a sumo wrestler, on Monday evening apparently was spotted at sounds like a high class cabaret club, a hostess bar in Ginza, in the middle of a sumo tournament where he was wrestling. He wrestled, I mean, basically, these are like human monster trucks, right? They basically, on a good match, it might go less than 2 seconds. They just crash into each other. Of course, you get long, there's a lot to it, but, on a good day, you just bulldoze through somebody. So why not go and have some drinks with some attractive ladies later on? And it's something that sumo wrestlers are apparently known for anyway. But in the middle of a tournament, on top of everything, and on top of when there's a pandemic and they're being told not to do this. So when it came out that he had done this, and first for 2 days he denied he denied it completely, but on the third day he said, okay, I'm sorry, I lied, I totally did it. And it was wrong, not so much for doing it. Apparently this is something that happens. Wrestlers go to hostess bars in the middle of tournaments, but apparently it was a breach of the coronavirus protocols, which the Sumo Association was using, and for that they condemned him. Very prompt, lots of outrage, and that in itself, fair enough. I mean, the person wasn't social distancing. He was going out drinking late at night when they were telling all the wrestlers, please be responsible, good ambassadors for the sport. It's not that actually which bothers me. What bothers me is that there was another wrestler in March who was concussed from a bout, hit the ground head first really hard, lay concussed on the dohyo, and no one came to help him, and he just lay there for 6 minutes, and eventually he was picked up. They didn't know what to do because you're supposed to pick yourself up, and they were like, hey, pick yourself up, it's only a brain injury. He was concussed, he went to hospital, he fell into a coma, and a month later recently he died. And the Sumo Association hasn't done anything about that very visibly, other than condolences. But the way that they treat the safety of their wrestlers, I mean, this is one thing, but the fact that the Sumo Association left the guy there on TV in the dohyo for 6 minutes, didn't do anything to help him. They let him die. The fact that and you see wrestlers get concussed all the time and they don't do anything about it. And you think about how seriously you're taking head injuries now in other sports. Again, it just shows, yes, sumo is supposed to protect tradition, including the old ideas of, being tough and whatever, and Spartan and whatnot, and hey, back in my day we'd get concussed 3 times before breakfast and all that kind of thing. But yeah, it's not just, I don't think it's a thing outside of Japan, the understanding that head injuries are not a joke, and that situation, and the fact that it actually ended up resulting in the death of the wrestler. That's what I think the Sumo Association should be focused on more than the girly bar. I mean, the girly bar, not good. But that same degree of outrage and attention being focused on the fact that they killed somebody, I think would be more appropriate. Just my opinion. Okay. So, final one. We're over time, but super rapid fire. Olympics and coronavirus. What's happening? Rapid fire update on that. So yes, Taro Kono, So right now, the idea of rolling out the vaccines is that they are going to roll out the vaccines in Japan by having your local GP or maybe even your dentist, they're just approved dentists or whatever. You can go, they'll have the local governments distribute it to all the local doctors, and they'll send out the forms, and you can go and get a reservation, go get your shot. So they do it all very locally on a small scale. But apparently when they open up these large military-run facilities in Osaka and Tokyo that can vaccinate 10,000 people per day, Taro asked Taro Kono Taro. He likes to be called Kono Taro in English. He's saying everyone should change Japanese name order, so I like to call him Taro Kono Taro. I actually quite like him, but I'm still going to troll him. He asked, hey, does anyone else want a large-scale vaccination center run by the central government? And 30 governments said, hell yes. So he's dealing with that. Also, Koike, the Tokyo governor, did the same thing. And because the Doctors Association says, oh no, we don't have any spare capacity to vaccinate people, she talked to the Dentists Association, and the Dentists Association, they're like, hell yeah, we can do that. And they're talking about using, from next month, Tokyo Dome and Shinjuku, I think, or something like that. They're actually going to set up some additional large vaccination centers all over Tokyo, which will be run by dentists, which will be, I don't care, geez, it'll be awesome, getting more of those. Although it doesn't mean that they're not already using lots of small vaccination centers, but again, having big centers to be more accessible to more people is a good idea. If you live in, I believe, Mongolia, Bhutan, what other countries? There's like Cambodia, Sri Lanka, Seychelles, St. Lucia, East Timor, Mongolia, and Thailand. You cannot enter Japan right now because coronavirus is getting bad in those countries. Thailand had a really great run, actually. They've done amazingly well until now, but again, you're getting these more contagious variants, so that's kind of freaky. Dozens of towns now, they're up to nearly 50 towns, have cancelled their hosting of Olympics camps because they say that they don't have the means to quarantine or provide medical care if any of the athletes that come have coronavirus. Thank you, PB. Please think of this as Bitcoin. I appreciate the thought. Thank you very much. So you've got that. What else have we got here? The Olympics minister. Oh yeah, she said that apparently they were going to have over 200,000 officials and athletes come, and of that it was going to be like 10,000 officials, and so 10,000 athletes and like 190,000 officials. They'll cut down the officials to like 80,000, so they've got the number down to 90,000. But there's still 90,000 people coming for the Olympics, which is like. I looked this up actually after tweeting it. I thought how many people fit on a cruise liner? About 1,000. Apparently the maximum capacity of most cruise liners nowadays is about 3,000. But if they were having cruise liners nowadays, I guess it'd be about 1,500. So if you take 1,500, it's basically the equivalent of having, so 90,000 people. What's that? It's like not 90. It'd be about 60 cruise liners coming at the same time to Japan full of people. How is that a good idea? It doesn't seem like a good idea, but that is what's happening. They're appealing that they've actually done better with that. The Ministry of Defense, which is running the two large vaccination centers, should be excellent PR for the Ministry of Defense, by the way, that they have the 10,000 a day vaccination centers in Osaka and Tokyo. Starting tomorrow, they start shooting people with injections. They don't actually shoot people. They're military, but they're not actually shooting people. They're giving shots. They start doing that tomorrow, but apparently during the week there was one of the tabloids figured out that some of the defects when they were using the entry, there are two bugs that are happening with the entry with the reservation screens, which right now elderly are using. Go on the internet to sign up. Apparently, on the one hand, people were putting in their correct personal information, but because of probably bad entry on the other side, people are not able to make reservations with their valid data. The other thing that was discovered was that that you could put in, any number in the reservation system, and that wouldn't validate whether your reservation number that you should have received on a postcard from the local government was actually a valid number or not. And when they published this, apparently some people discovered this and it got around, and the journalists heard this and checked it, and they said, oh, the system's got a bug in it. So, hey, everybody, this is a problem. You should fix it. The Ministry of Defense responded, no, we didn't. That's a design thing. We want people to put in valid numbers, but the reason we don't check the numbers is we didn't want to link to all the municipal systems because we didn't want to have a risk of leak of data. So we didn't do it. It's not a mistake. We did it on purpose. However, you revealing this feature that we designed on purpose, as I just explained, and that is definitely not a bug, you revealing it publicly is treasonous. So the bit is, again, this should be great PR for the military, but they're basically accusing the media of treason for pointing out a bug in their system, which they said that they did on purpose, but they're going to fix. But they didn't do it on purpose, and pointing it out, even though it's a design feature, is treasonous. So yeah, that wasn't really a good look. There was that. Other stuff that happened is, Moderna and AstraZeneca got approved on Friday. However, everyone's looking at the AstraZeneca right now like a little bit. It's actually I think it's being manufactured in Japan by Takeda. It's the only vaccine currently planned to be manufactured in Japan, and they'd secured 120 million shots, so enough for half of the population. But right now, there's no plans to use it in any distributions. The Moderna one, by the way, I think the AstraZeneca one, from what I understand, is a traditional type of vaccine, whereas the Moderna one is very much like the Pfizer one. It's an mRNA, super effective, like 94% effective. Can be stored with Pfizer as well now, it seems. They can both be stored in a regular freezer for 30 days after being defrosted and prepared and whatever. So, actually the Moderna are pretty much as good as the Pfizer one, and they are going to be using those in the central government-run mass vaccination centers. So that's pretty cool, actually, that they've got that approved now, and they can start using those for shots. So that's some good news. There's a thing here about the TV feature on emoji that Japanese women think are most likely to be used by middle-aged men. I guess I used to use the sweat one a little bit. I don't use it so much, but there you go. I mean, if you want to look like a middle-aged man, maybe these are the ones to pick. I saw people suddenly being very sensitive, but there you go. There's the Tokyo governor saying that she's going to set up dentist-run large-scale vaccination centers. Oh, I wanted to talk about this, and I brought this up to the front. There's a great article that's shared here. It's shared on my Twitter recently. It was actually tweeted by God. It wasn't shared by God. It was shared by name escapes me. But anyway, there's this article in Attack magazine on how Japanese technology shaped dance music, and it's a great article. You should totally read it if you're into music. It talks about how Korg, Roland, Yamaha, Technics, Audio Technica, all these companies, how basically in the 70s and the 80s they sort of talk with people from each one of the companies, and what they did was they basically started out absolutely copying the musical instruments and equipment of the West, but then they basically did what they do. They made really, really good copies, and they adapted it. They wanted to make it cheaper, which of course it was cheaper back in those days. So they wanted to save some money on it and make it a bit more smaller and add some features that were, and add features to it that sort of suited their needs. And because the Japanese equipment was cheaper and more accessible, it became the equipment that most musicians often got first. And, a whole generation of people who made music electronically in the 80s and the 70s, particularly in the 80s, almost always used these Korgs. They always used the Rolands, they used the Yamahas, they used the Technics and so on, because it was more accessible, and it ended up creating the entire world landscape of electronic music. It's a great topic, and there's a great article that goes into the depth on how that happens. That's awesome. And that's all the topics. This video, 8 types of Japanese learners from a door game, was awesome, and thank you to Aaron for all the awesome editing that you did. As usual, I'm 10 minutes over. I was really rushing there at the end. But Savas Musician, good to see you. Atomic Tom, good to see you. Wing Star, awesome to see you. I love Ayumi Hamasaki and Capsule as well. Big fan of Capsule, actually. I think they do excellent stuff, so good taste there. Wing Star. As you can see, I kind of just put my head down. Tuppy Cat, good to see you. Could I please tweak the volume up? It's always low. I'm hitting like the red lines over here, so I'm broadcasting as high a volume as I can do. But yeah, I'll take a look at that. Thank you, Duppy Cat. We do definitely tweak it when Erin does the edit, so she does a wonderful job of. Jex Ashbolt, good to see you. Going on the 31st there in Canada. Good to have you joining us from Canada, by the way. Much like Believe in Yourself and everyone else. Pew pew, people getting shot. Yeah, I misspoke there. The military is definitely not shooting people. I would not agree to increasing the budget if they were. So look, hey, thank you for joining. As usual every week, it was a scramble. So much to talk about. Flynn, good to see you. Remember, if you like the video, please like it. I appreciate it. Feel free to watch it if you missed the start of it. Lots of interesting stuff going on as always. I've got nowhere else to go. I am locked down. I'm here every Sunday. I am on Twitter as well if you want to follow me there. yeah, if you want to interact with me, whatever, good to see you all. Maddie, good to see you, Maddie. It's awesome you went to a capsule concert. I'm jealous. 2019, back when we could go to concerts. Who would have thought? So yes, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Remember, follow, remember, like the video. I do appreciate it. It does help the video a lot. Keep giving me feedback on the short videos as well. We're putting a lot of effort into those. Aaron's done such a great job. I really, really appreciate that. Let me know. Again, things like the ads, things like the volume, whatever. But yeah, we're putting a lot into that. And have a good week, everybody. Stay safe. Take care of yourself. Kakitano. Peace. Boom. I gotta go to bed now. See you later.